Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Shambhu and in this video I am going to talk about an automation tool. The name of the automation tool is NSO or Cisco Network Service Orchestrator, and I finally think that this tool has the potential to become the favorite automation tool for everybody. By everybody, what I mean is if you are a good old classic network engineer who likes to be on CLI for the configuration, for the management, for the troubleshooting, you can very quickly learn and manage this tool. Or if you are someone who is doing networking these days but has an inclination towards the programming like Java or maybe Python, etc., then this is a tool for you also. So watch the video till the end to know more about the tool. Now let's get started with the agenda what I have. So agenda is very simple. First of all, I'm going to talk about what is NSO, and I'm going to talk a little about the architecture of NSO. I don't want to get deeper into the architecture because my goal is to keep it simple and effective. So I'll more focus on demonstrations. I have a demo for the configuration management. I have a demo for the bulk changes which you might be doing day to day in your networks, and I also have a demo for pulling and operational data from the network. I'll talk more about these demos when I'll come to those slides. For now, let's get started with the first point, which is what is NSO. In this slide, we are seeing NSO architecture, I mean NSO as a product, and we are seeing different components defined as blocks, and also we are seeing logical representation of the interfaces that the NSO has. So starting from the top, you are seeing that here we have network engineer, then operations and provisioning team, and then service developers. What this is defining is it is telling you that NSO has interfaces which can talk to our CLI based network engineers. NSO has different interfaces with which operations and provisioning team can talk to NSOs, and also it has different API interfaces maybe with which service developers wants to talk to NSO. So it has different kind of interfaces. I'll talk more about these interfaces in my upcoming slide. For now, let's get started with the other components that we have on NSO. So first of all, let's discuss about the service manager that we have in NSO. Service manager is nothing but something which is managing the services. And what exactly we define as a service in NSO? In NSO, you can define different tasks. For example, on daily basis, if you want to do something in your network on a set of devices, you can define that as a task or a service, and service manager will help you define and execute those tasks. That is all about service manager. Now moving to the next component that you see here, which is called device manager. So once the NSO is initialized, normally what we do is we add devices to NSO. So in order to add devices, we need to define certain parameters. The parameters with which NSO will talk to those devices, like username, passwords, and transport protocols, etc. Once those things are defined, then you go ahead and connect to the devices, or NSO goes ahead and connects to the device. Once the device is connected, NSO would fetch the configuration, etc. from the device, and the device and NSO would come in sync. So the device manager basically helps you to maintain that particular list of the devices. So if you want to define the device manager in easiest way, it can be defined as a service which is managing, maintaining your device lists which are connected to the NSO. Now the third and important component that we have in NSO is CDB or configuration database. I would say CDB is the most important part of NSO because NSO is majorly known for its capability to manage the configuration of network devices. So CDB has a unique way to save the configuration. It is you don't see the .cfg or .txt getting saved in the CDB. Rather, it has taken a model-driven approach to save the configuration. It saves the device configuration in a tree structure controlled by the Yang schema. You can say that the NSO fetches the configuration from the router, parses it line by line, and creates a Yang schema based version of it. And also one very important part about CDB is this is a unique database which also fulfills the ACID property. So this defined atomicity, consistency, integrity, and durability of a database. So all of these characteristics are there in the CDB of NSO, and I think it was very important to have this kind of characteristic in the database, because at the same time I would say your provisioning or your service developers or your network engineer might be talking to the database, and when multiple people are talking to a single database, it is very important for that database to have this ACID property. On top of that, complying with ACID property also gives us a major advantage, that makes this particular database as a transactional in nature, which means that any change goes as a transaction to the device, and if any particular component of that particular transaction is not configured, then the whole transaction is not configured. And it also provides the capability to roll back the complete transaction if something is wrong with the transaction. For example, you have configured the router, you have committed the changes, and there is something down in your network. So you want to undo the most recent change in your network, right? So you will go ahead and roll back that particular transaction and you are good. And all these things can be done from the NSO itself. You don't need to log into the device. And even some of the devices in your network, for example iOS XE devices, they don't provide you the capability to roll back to the previous instance of the configuration. Although XR does, Cisco XR does, but iOS XE doesn't provide you that particular capability. But if you are using Cisco NSO on XE devices also, you can roll back to the previous working instance of the configuration. That's all about CDB that we have. Now let's move to the package manager. NSO maintains different packages. For example, one of the package I talked about in Service Manager, those are called service package, with which you define a particular kind of task. That is one kind of package. There is another package which is called NED, or Network Element Driver. You can think NED as a device driver, and it contains a method to talk to the devices. For example, if the device just knows the CLI method to talk to it. So NED will provide you a CLI method with which your NSO can talk to that particular device. Or if your device wants to talk to SNMP only, or if your device wants to talk to REST API and netconf only, then this NED is going to provide you that capability with which the NSO is going to talk to that particular device in that same language what device talks. The NED is also a package, and the package manager is nothing which is managing all these packages. For example, NED or the service packages. So you define the package, you reload the package, you create new packages. Everything is done with the help of package manager what we have. So with this, let's talk about another very important component which is called ESC, or Elastic Controllers. This Elastic Service Controller is a separate product in Cisco, but it is also integrated with Cisco NSO. This product basically helps us for the lifecycle management of all the VNFs that you have in your network. Mostly useful if you have an OpenStack environment where you have different VNFs configured, etc. So this will help you to manage all those VNFs and their lifecycle management, etc. So this is all about the architecture. You can go to developer.cisco.com. It's a very handy website if you are just starting with NSO. Now let's move to the next slide. So I said that I'll talk a little more about interfaces that NSO has. This particular slide is talking about all those interfaces. For example, here you are seeing that our network engineer is sitting. Here you can see that our application is sitting. And in the middle we have NSO, which has different interfaces. For example, if you are someone who is well versed with CLI, the NSO provides that particular interface. If you are someone who is not well versed with CLI but has a good hands-on on GUI, and you have been working on GUI since forever, so this is the place for you. It provides a very good GUI support. And apart from this, if you also have some of the exposure to programming stuff, for example Python, Java, Erlang, etc., then all those APIs are available on NSO, with which you can do almost everything which can be done with the CLI and GUI. And last but not the least, it is also REST and netconf capable. So all these interfaces are mostly used by either network programmers or the network engineers. And more commonly, people also know all these interfaces as northbound interfaces because those are coming in north direction. And we also have southbound interface of NSO. So for example, this network engineer has configured something via CLI and it has pushed the changes to the NSO. Now NSO will have to propagate that particular change to the devices. This is the device which is sitting in the network. So it will have to push the configuration to this particular device. And in order to push the configuration, NSO is going to use any of these methods: REST, netconf, SNMP, CLI, etc. So these are the southbound interfaces or NSO. In my demonstration, what path I am going to follow is this. I am going to configure NSO with CLI, and then NSO is going to use CLI to configure the end devices. So this is the path which I am going to use. I'll also show you the GUI, and I will also show you a little bit of REST configuration. So let me move to the next section of the video, which is demonstrations. Okay, so before I get into the actual lab, I just wanted to show you the setup that I am using for this lab. So first of all, if you want to install a Cisco NSO, then you'll have to go to this particular document. The link is given in description as well. So you can go to this document and there step-by-step installation process and from where to get the NSO file, everything is given. Just follow that process and install the NSO on any of the Linux device that you have. So I'll tell you what is my setup. So at the bottom you are seeing my setup. I have Ubuntu machine which is having NSO installed, and for the devices I have GNS3 installed. In GNS3 I have XR, XE, iOS and NXOS, and all of them are connected with NSO, and underlying network is VM network. So I have created this VM network earlier and I'm using the same one here. So this particular VM network is connecting both the NSO and the GNS3. So whenever I am installing a new device, for example, if I am installing an NXOS device or if I am installing one iOS device, I am just assigning one IP address from that network, and NSO is already having IP address in that network. So they are talking internally within the Ubuntu machine. So this seems to be a promising setup. Let's get started with the lab. Okay, so with this, I come to my first demo, which is the configuration management. So I am going to show you how NSO is managing the configuration from the devices. And as a part of it, I'll also explain how to add a device to NSO and how to sync the configuration from the devices, etc. While we are doing this, I would like you to imagine a situation where suppose we have a router R1 and we have some configuration on the router, and now this router is added to NSO, and on NSO we have one version of the configuration which is working version of the configuration. Let's say the name of that version is V1. Now there is something wrong in the network, or maybe on the router it got reloaded, or some card got reloaded, some maybe some misconfiguration from the users or admins, or anything happened on the router, and now router's configuration version is V2, and this V2 configuration is causing the issues in the network. Now what normally you do, you search for the previous working configuration on the of the router, right? In this case, now you can see that how easy it has become. So last time when you saved the configuration, you have also synced that particular part of the configuration to NSO. Now this V2 configuration which was done on the router, since it was caused by some anomaly, so this particular part is not yet synced to NSO. NSO is still running the previous version of the configuration, which was best configuration for the network. You can just directly go to NSO and write that configuration on the device, or probably sync that configuration from NSO to the device, and you are done. You know, this particular problem is solved. While I am walking through the list of items that I need to accomplish in this particular lab, I want you to keep this particular situation in your mind, because by going through this lab, you would be able to solve this particular problem in your network very quickly. So let's get started. Before I start, I'll just quickly show you the GUI and CLI of NSO. So this is the GUI and this is how it looks like if I go to home page. We have a commit manager, configuration editor, device manager, services manager. So for these two I have already discussed in my previous slides. And then we also have a dashboard and alarm manager. So on the dashboard you can see that there are few devices, alarms, how many users currently connected to NSOs, and all those informations are given. For these particular devices there are certain options given, like you can identify if the ping is working, you can connect to device, and then check the configuration sync between the NSO and the router. If it is not in sync, you can sync the configuration from the router to NSO, or if you want to send the configuration which is sitting on NSO to the router, so you can do sync to. And in any case, if there has been any changes like version 1 and version 2 configurations running on both these devices, so you can compare and see what are the differences between those two configurations. If you click here in this section, it will show you the differences. Getting back to my presentation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a device, and once the device is added, I'm going to sync configuration from the device to NSO, and then from NSO I'm going to add some configuration to the device and commit the changes, so that configuration will go to the device. And then on the router I'll remove some configuration to bring the router configuration in version 2, which is the non-working version, and then I'll show you how we can sync the working version from NSO to the router. So this is my GNS3. You have seen in GUI that I have NXOS router, I have iOS XE router, and then I have another iOS XE router, and then one XR router. Now I have added this iOS V1 router newly to GNS3, and apart from bringing the router up, I have also configured SSH on the device. So this SSH is going to be the protocol. You can also use telnet. I'll quickly show you the router configuration. This is my router. If you do show run, there is nothing else configured, just IP address is given on one of the interface gig00, which is the interface going towards this switch. So this gig00 interface, you can see it is going towards the switch, and switch is connected to the VM network. This IP address is defined, and if you do show IP SSH, you can see that SSH version 2 is enabled. So that is all. This is the complete configuration on the router. Now let's get into the NSO CLI and show you how to add the device here. This is the CLI that we have. Just like we have seen GUI, in CLI also you can check the device list, etc. And the command for that is show devices list. You can see that all those devices can be seen from here also. You can also see the configuration for a particular device. If you do show running configuration devices device NXOS1, you can see the configuration from the device is available on NSO. So my first task is to add the device. So if you see the task here, the first task is add a device. So my iOS V router needs to be added to NSO. I have a set of commands that I'll have to execute here. So before I add the device, I'll have to create an authentication group. This authentication group will have user ID and password for the NSO to connect to the device. So let's define that. I'll get into configuration and I'll do devices, then auth group. If you put a question mark, it says that the group and the name of the group. So there are few names already taken. You can see that there are few names already taken. This is also iOS device, so I'm going to put it as iOS 1. Now after that we have certain options here. I'll do a default map, and if you put a question mark here, there are few things that you can specify here. I'm going to use remote name, which is corresponding with the username on the router. My username is Cisco, and then I'm going to do the same for the password. Remote password is going to be Cisco, and if you have enable password set up on your router, you can actually do secondary password, which is also Cisco. So that is all. My default authentication group is set, and now this authentication group can be added to the device which I'm going to add. So in order to add the device, I'll have to do devices, device, and then the name of the device. So my device is iOS v1, and then the address of the device address is going to be 192.168.122.7. You can verify that address here. Show IP interface brief. You can see that 122.7 is the address. So that is their authentication group I have just created. This is iOS 1, I think. Yes, iOS 1. And then after that, you can also specify if you want to verify the SSH host key or not. So in this case, I'm not going to do that, question mark, but you will have to specify if you want to, verify the host key or not. So that is the reason here you will have to put the command that host key verification should be none. And there are a few more important things, like you will have to specify device type, which is going to be CLI in my case, CLI, and net ID is going to be Cisco iOS net, Cisco iOS 3.0 net I am going to use. And again, device type, and if you put a question mark after CLI, you have another option which is to specify the protocol. I am going to use SSH. You can see that you can also use telnet here. So I am going to use SSH, although doesn't matter, it is lab, so I could have used telnet also, but that's okay. Now after that, let's put question mark. We see lots and lots of options that we can configure, but here you just need to configure one more thing in order to complete the configuration, which is state of the device. So there are unlock and lock states. You'll have to unlock the device to connect it to the NSO. So for that, the command is state, and admin state is going to be unlocked. And then after that, you can just commit the configuration. You can see that commit is complete. That means our configuration is good. Now the next thing to do is to connect to the device. So now, with all the authentication parameters and other parameters that we have configured under the device, this NSO is going to connect to the router, that means iOS 1 router. Let me show you that. So it is connecting, and you can see that the result is true. That means connection is successful. Now let's quickly check the configuration of the device. So I'll end here, and I'll go to show running configuration devices, device iOS v1. You can see that there is no configuration from the device. These are the parameters that I have configured, and these are few other commands which NSO has put it here. They're not very critical commands. The only thing which I see here is the configuration which I have put on NSO. NSO has not pulled anything from the device. So in order to do that, you can just get into the configuration mode and try to sync the configuration from the device. Before that, let me just check the device list if this device is showing here or not. So you can see that in the device list we are seeing the router already here. Now I'll get into the configuration mode and try to sync the configuration, the complete running configuration from the device to NSO as well. So I'll do devices, device iOS v1, and sync from the device. Now it is going to pull the configuration from the device. The result is true if I do end and show running configuration devices, device iOS v1. You can see that the complete configuration from the device, including the banner, etc., everything is there. Okay, that's good. Now let's move to the PPT one more time. Now in the PPT, it says that add some configuration to the device from NSO and then remove that configuration from the router. That means get into the router console and remove that configuration so that we have version 1 and version 2 configurations between NSO and the router, and then sync the configuration to the router. So this all thing is being done in order to solve the problem that we have created here. So let's get into the NSO and try to configure something from the NSO to the router. So in order to do that, you will have to get into the configuration mode. Now from here, you will have to get into the configuration mode of the router. For that, you need to get into devices and then device iOS v1, and here type the configuration. Now you are into config mode. You need to keep a track of this particular prompt because it is possible that you are into some other devices config mode, and you make changes there. So if you are unsure at any point of time, just type pwd and it will tell you that which is the router, which device's configuration mode you are right now. So it is in iOS v routers config mode. I am going to configure something here. For example, in this configuration, I see that the logging host is earlier configured as 192.168.10.1. I am going to change this logging host. For example, I'm going to do no logging host 192.168.10.1, and let's add another logging host which is going to be 192.168.11.1, and then I'm going to commit this change. Before committing this data, you can actually see that what is getting committed. So you can do commit dry run, and if you put enter here, it will tell you that what is the configuration that is going to the router. So it says that minus this configuration and plus this configuration. So we are removing this particular part of the configuration and adding this particular part of the configuration. Now this particular structure that you are seeing, this structure precisely I have talked about, that CDB, it saves the data in Yang schema structure, which is a tree format. You can also check the native version of the configuration. So from here you can do out format native, which will show you the configuration in CLI. So what configurations are going is no logging host this particular host, and then logging host this particular host. So this is the configuration which is going to the router, and now I'm going to do commit, and the commit is complete. Now if you go to show running configuration of the router which is saved on NSO, this change should be visible. Devices, device iOS v1. Let's get at the end. You can see that this logging host is changed now. And if you go to the router, you can see that there are some logins to the router and some changes that have been done. But if you do show run include logging, you can see that the logging host is also changed on the router. So we have pushed some configuration on the device. Now let's do the another part of the configuration to remove the configuration from the router so that there is no sync between the configurations. So I'm going to remove this logging host that I have configured. I'm just going to do no on the router and then end and write configuration. Now if you get into the NSO and do show running devices device iOS v1, NSO is still having the previous working version of the configuration. This is a good thing. Now if you go to NSO GUI, you check sync and it gives you a red indication that sync is not correct between both the devices. So it says that device is not in sync, and basically what it is trying to do is it is trying to compare some integrity between the configuration. So it says that it has got this particular hash and it was expecting this particular hash. So it looks like some integrity is broken between the configuration on device and the router. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare that configuration, and I can clearly see that on the CDB or on NSO we have this part of the configuration which is not present on the router. Clearly we can see that there is some mismatches between the configuration. Now I can do this synchronization from the GUI also, but I am going to show you the CLI way. Get into the configuration mode. Now I'll go into devices, device, and then iOS v1 sync 2. So I am going to synchronize the configuration which is on NSO to the router. So I'm going to put this sync to command, and if it comes as true, then our configuration should be good. Now if I check the configuration on router, let's get to the router and do show run include logging. This particular configuration is again present on the router. Basically we have restored the best version or best working version of the configuration to the router with the help of NSO here. If you go to GUI now and if you do check sync, it should be green. If you do compare configuration, it should also be green. So this is good. Now just let me show you a few more important things. For example, if you are from XR world, you know that there are a list of commits saved on the router itself, right? Configuration commits. So this is the iOS device. On iOS device, we don't have that feature. So NSO provides this particular feature natively irrespective of the platform. All the commits that we have done to the router is already saved on NSO, and in order to see that, you will have to do show configuration commit and then changes, or maybe if you do list, you can see all the list since the day NSO has become active, I think. And the recent changes which I have done is having this particular ID. So if I want to see that change, and if I put the ID, you can see that what was the configuration done. This is also very handy piece of the information. With this, I am done with my first lab or first demonstration. We have accomplished everything what is given there, and we have talked about a particular scenario which can come in your network and how to deal with that scenario with the help of NSO. Let me move to the next lab. In this particular demo, we will understand that how exactly the NSO is managing the bulk changes. For example, you have a particular change. Now you want to implement that particular change to set of devices, like say hundreds of devices. It can be small configuration, it can be bigger configuration, whatever. Just think that if you don't have any automation tool like NSO, how exactly you are going to do that? You'll have to log into all the devices, or you will have to write script, need basis. Whenever the task come, you'll have to write that particular script and then push the configuration, etc. Even that is a very tedious task. You will have to maintain all versions of script and all those things. And if something is not working, then again compile and rerun and debug. All those problems are there. Here I'll show you that how NSO has simplified this whole situation. On my screen you are seeing a small pictorial representation of how NSO is doing that. Suppose you have a device list R1, R2, R3 for which you want to push a particular piece of configuration. In NSO we can create a device group where you will put all the devices like R1, R2, R3, and then you will have your configuration template where you will put all the configuration that you want to push to those devices, and this template will be applied to the device group, and you are done. That is a simple way to make bulk changes in your network. So let's see how exactly we are going to do it. There can be many use cases for this one. Like in service provider domain, there are thousands and thousands of devices which needs to be upgraded overnight. You can very quickly do all those things with the help of Cisco NSO. Let me quickly jump on to my router and show you how exactly it is done. So this is my GNS3. In NSO, we have already seen the list of devices. And we know that iOS XE1 and iOS XE2 devices are already added to NSO. I am going to group these devices and create a configuration template for a logging host again. So what I want is I want to update the logging host on these devices. We just have two devices. There can be hundreds of devices on which you want to do the similar kind of operations. Now let's quickly move to my NSO and start configuring the groups and other templates. Okay, this is my NSO. Now I am going to check devices first of all. Show device list, and I see that iOS XE we have two devices sitting here, and now I'm going to group both of these devices. So for that I'll do devices, device group, and some name of the group, for example XC hyphen devices. That's it. Now inside the group we have different options available. I'm going to specify the name of the devices. The device name is going to be XC1 device, and the another device is going to be XC2 device. That's it. My group configuration is done. I am going to commit it. This commit is done. Now I'm going to create a template of the configuration. So for that, device and then template. Here we can specify the name of the template, like I'll do log. I'm going to use this template to configure the logging host on those devices, so I'm going to do log. Here now you need to specify that what kind of configuration that you are going to put here. If it is going to be iOS configuration or XR configuration or XC configuration or NXOS configuration, so corresponding NED needs to be specified here. So for that I am going to do NED ID, and I'll do Cisco hyphen iOS hyphen CLI 3.8 NED. Once the NED is specified, you can get into the config mode, and in the config mode, if you do pwd here, you can see that you are inside device template, and the name of the template is log, and the NED ID is CLI NED, and you are inside the configuration section. Here I'll specify the logging host as 192.168.11.1, and then commit dry run out format native. Okay, so for some reason the native configuration is not yet present, but if we do commit dry run, it tells you that what is going to be the configuration. So I'm just going to do commit here. The template is complete, the device group is complete. So let's see what we have achieved till now. We have configured this part and we have configured this part. Now I'll have to put a piece of configuration which can, attach these two things and execute the command on routers. So I'm going to go to top, and from here, if you do devices, device group, which is XC device. Now if you put a question mark, it says that the first option says that apply template. Now if you put a question mark after apply template, it is asking for a template name which you want to apply. Now if I specify the template name, you can see after question mark we have a set of templates which we can specify here. I'm going to choose the log template, and I'm going to put enter here. Alright, so this looks good. Now what I'm going to do is commit changes. For that I'll do commit, and the commit is complete. Now if I go to the running configuration of iOS XE1 router, so it should show me the changes that I have recently done. If I do show run devices, device XE1, so excellent. So it has added one more logging host here. If I check the same configuration on XC2, alright, so it has also added another logging host here. Let's check if it is applied on the router also or not. So we will go to XC1 router and we'll do show run include logging. Wow, so this is also applied here. That's it. I think that was quite easy. In order to do bulk changes the NSO provides a very easy way. Previously it was not that easy. With this I'll move to my third demo, which is to check the operational data or pull the operational data for the device. So I've talked about this particular spider diagram. In this, what we are seeing is there are different interfaces with which applications or engineers etc. are talking with NSOs, like this. All these are interfaces, and these are the interfaces with which NSO is talking with the routers. So the one which I am following is this particular interface and this particular interface. So I have shown you this one also. So suppose I am the admin sitting here. I am talking with NSO with the help of GUI. I am talking with NSO with the help of CLI, and then I am passing the instructions to NSO. Now NSO is just using, in my case, CLI to communicate those instructions to the routers which are sitting right here. Now there are two kinds of data which is sitting on the router. For example, this is the router. It will have something called config data, and it will have something called operational data. So the config data is something which we normally configure, and the operational data, which is something which is generated on the router while the router is operating. For example, if you want to see ARP table, or if you want to see interface stats, or if you want to see routing table, etc., those all data come under the operational data on the router. There can be a situation or there can be a compliance requirement or something like that, for which you need to pull bulk operational data from the network. Till previous slide, what we have seen is, if you want to do a bulk configuration, what is going to be the way, right? In this particular slide, what we are going to see is, if you want to do an operational data pull from the network, like from hundreds of devices, then how you are going to do that. Let me just quickly jump to NSO and show you how easy NSO has made all these things. For example, if I want to pull licensing data from all the devices in my network, so here we have show devices list. We have already seen this earlier also. So we have 5 devices. Now the NXOS, this is the free version of NSO. So this particular NED is not supporting the operational data. We can have other NED, or probably we can create our own package for the operational data. That is a different story. I'll talk in different videos. But here, let's see, I want to see the licensing usage from all other devices. So what I'm going to do is devices, and then you can specify the name of the devices, but I'm going to do star here, and then I'm going to do live status, and the exec command which I'm going to pass to the routers is going to be a show command, and precisely it is show license usage. Let's put enter. It says that the first result is from XC1 router. It says that license authorization no license in use, and then on XC2 device also it says that no license in use, and then there is the output coming from XR device. You can see it says that there is no feature or license to display. So these are GNS3 hosts. You don't need to worry about. Now, what are the devices missing here in this case? The NXOS is missing and iOS v1 is missing. So if you want to do some very generic output like show version include uptime. So this is my output. These are coming from 3 different devices: XC1, XC2 and iOS devices. One more time, I would like to tell you that there are few devices where the NED is not supporting operational data. I think on iOS V router also it is not supporting. So that is the reason we are not seeing anything from the iOS V router. Just to quickly verify it, if I go to just this iOS V router and check the live status with exec command show version, I'm not expecting that I'm going to get any result out of this command. It is not working. And for the same output, if I run on iOS XC devices like on XC1, we will get the show version here. This is the free version of NSO, so I can't complain. I mean, whatever I could see, that is more than enough. But if you are buying NSO support from Cisco, you can actually raise a tag case and they are going to help you add any particular feature or any particular package that you want. So this is not a problem. With this, let me get back to my presentation. So I'm done with all the three demos that I have. There are so many things which are left. I wanted to cover this REST API part, but I think I'll keep it for the next video that I'm going to create. Thank you so much for watching till now, and let me know if you have any questions in comment down below. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much again.